Hi guys, welcome to video 3. We're going to look at creating graphics for sliders and knobs, and in this video we'll look at how the GUI control graphics are created, and then in the next video we'll build a small script to familiarize you with implementing graphics in Kontakt. And here's what I'll just bring it up. Here's what our finished GUI exercise instrument will look like. So you can see we've got a knob here, we've got something going on here. I've got something going on here. You'll recognize this background skin is taken directly from the template I gave you. So let's have a quick look at how we create these things. The standard software for knob design is a free program called KnobMan, which can be downloaded from the website link displayed on your screen. Now, KnobMan is a purpose-built application for creating animated knobs and sliders, but it can also be used to create buttons, menus, and many other types of graphics. I'm going to bring an instrument up now I created the GUI for last year and show you some of the things that you can do. So I used this instrument to demo something else in another video. I think it was in lesson 1 or 2. But now I want to show you it to let you see what KnobMan is capable of. So I was given a brief for the design of this instrument to look like a Tascam 234, I believe. I'm going to bring up the image now. So yeah, Tascam 234. So this was my brief. He wanted something that resembled this. And you can see, let me pull this across here. You can see the play, the transport controls here. You can see I've got a fairly similar thing going on over here. We've got the power button there, power button here, and we've got the rack mount fittings, and they're the same on here. So you can see it was heavily based on this, and the VU meter, which in this instrument is a velocity meter, again was based on the design of this. You can also see I took inspiration from these small buttons and the LEDs, and of course the knobs. So all of this was directly based on this image, which was provided to me by the client. So KnobMan's capable of some cool stuff. I created the VU meter in KnobMan. If I play something, you can see the needle moves. And that just uses frames of animation that I'm controlling using velocity. And we're going to look at how we can do similar things to that in our script. And these knobs were created entirely in KnobMan, and we'll have a quick look at KnobMan in a moment. Now, although KnobMan can create buttons, I created these in Photoshop. I find it easy to work in Photoshop for creating buttons, but some people prefer to do that in KnobMan as well. Okay, I'm going to close that down now. I'll put our GUI exercise back. So the KnobMan file we're going to use in this exercise is included in the study material folder that accompanies this lesson. You can see that on your screen. It's this one called knob.knob. But right now I'm going to give you a quick tutorial of KnobMan and show you how that particular knob was made. Now, even if you're not a graphic designer and you don't plan on doing your own graphics, this will be useful when you're informing your graphic designer of your requirements, because you'll know what the tools are that they're working with. It's quite a basic interface. There is a newer version out, which I believe is Java based, and I think there's also an online version, but I'm happy with this version, so I haven't updated to the latest. Now, don't worry, it's not going to be a very in-depth tutorial, as this series is focused on Kontakt scripting, but it will give you an understanding of how animated graphics are designed, the basics of using KnobMan, and some information about the exported image files that will be useful when we start implementing custom graphics in our instrument, and of course it will be useful to you in your own projects. So it's similar to Photoshop in some ways. We have layers over here. If you know about Photoshop, these layers can each have a graphic on them. So I'm going to show you that now, because for those of you not familiar with photo editing packages, you might not have a clue what I'm on about. So I'm going to add a circle. So you can see a circle has appeared down here. Let's zoom in. Okay, so we've got a circle there. And we're in preview mode. So preview mode is showing us 5 frames of our animation as a preview. There's also render mode, which will show us all the frames of our animation, and we can scroll through them. And there's test mode, which will just show us one, and there's a slider here which lets us scroll through the frames of animation and actually see the animation in progress. So we'll check out those things in a moment. I prefer to stay in test mode. So you can think of a layer in a way as like sheets of paper on top of each other, and you can put stuff on one sheet of paper. We've got one here on our middle layer, so we put a circle, and on the layers above it you can add other stuff. And if you put, so let's let me think, let's put a triangle, and I'll change the color of it so we can see it. I'll make this black, so you can see we have a black, although stretched, we have a black, let me bring that down, we have a black triangle on top of our circle now. So you can think layer 3 is on top of layer 2, but I can drag it and put it behind layer 2, and now layer 3 is on top of layer 2, so it covers our triangle. So this is just a way of organizing our different elements that create the graphic. These eyes at the side are to hide things. If we click on it, it takes the eye away, so it becomes invisible. If we click on it again, it becomes visible. This is standard stuff for Photoshop and most other photo editing packages. So hopefully you've got some experience with that, but if not, this is all you really need to know. Okay, I've just gone into preferences because I'm just going to select this oversampling thing, and all it's going to do is increase the resolution of the graphic. Right, so let's look at creating this knob. So I'm just going to delete these layers. The finished thing, by the way, will look like that. And in test mode, we'll be able to go through it, just give it a moment to render it, and you can see we can actually test how the animation will look. And this is an actual size. What we can do is drag out a version that is the actual size, and we can put it wherever we want, and then move this again. So it's quite good for actually prototyping. You'll see we can actually have Kontakt open and drag the knob onto Kontakt. You can see it's not actually part of Kontakt, it's just overlaid on top of it, but it's good if you're testing things out and you want to see how it's going to look with the rest of your interface. Right, back to building it. We'll just get rid of him. Okay, so this is our new project, and the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to add a coloured background here so I can see what I'm working with. You don't need to worry about this. Okay, so let me show you it in Kontakt. You can see we've got this white circle on the outside of the graphic, and we've got these sort of measurement points around its circumference. So let's create that first of all. So on the first layer, I'm going to add a circle. You can see it's already there for me, and it adds a red band. We want a white band, so I'm just going to change the color to white. Nice and easy. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because this is currently going right up to the edge of our drawing area. In fact, if I had a new layer and just put a square on it, you will see the extent to which we can draw. So you can see that's the size of our canvas. I'm going to zoom in on that again. That's the size of our canvas there. So I'm going to make it a bit smaller so that when we put the measurement markings on, they don't go off the edge. So to do that, we've got this zoom control. It's really a scaling control, but I'm just going to put 90 in there. And the X and the Y are joined, unless I click X and Y separate there. So if I put 90 in for the X, that's applied to the Y as well. And I've just realized I've scaled the square instead of the circle. So I'll just go to the correct layer here, and we'll put in 90. Okay, let's get rid of that red. It's a bit horrible. Change it to green. Green is restful. Green is good. Okay, now I'm going to change the width of this circle as well. Do that here, just change the width to 8. Seems to be fine for me. And now we need to add these markings around the outside, so I'm going to add a new layer, and you can see it's put it by default underneath my circle layer. That's fine, we'll leave it there. And we're going to go down to where we've got radiate line. That's what we want. And you see half the work's already done for us. We've just got to change these values. Put a width of 5. We'll leave the length of 50. Leave that at 45. We need to... Okay, we can leave it like that and just change it to white. And the reason we don't have to change the length or anything of these lines is because you can see they're going to be hidden by the silver knob anyway. Okay. So you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along this sort of bottom half of the circle, we've got 5 lines. But on the top, you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I've recounted those, but you can see we've got these thin ones in between, so we need to add those. So to do that, I add another layer, and then I add more radial lines or radiate lines, and change it to a width of 2. And we'll change the angle step to 22. And I'll show you what the angle step does. If I move it in real time, you can see the preview window over here, by the way, on the left hand side. But that's basically what the angle step's doing. And I've worked this out before, so I know that we want 22 there. Colour to be white, of course, but we could have it any colour we desire. And then we need to use something called a mask. If you're familiar with Photoshop, masks are something we use commonly in Photoshop. But a mask basically masks something, it hides it. And what we want to do is, because you can see, let me just take the mask off again. You can see that in this preview window, these thin lines go all the way around. But in our finished one, they should only be in the top half. So we use a mask to hide the bottom half. So you can watch the preview window for this, or you can watch the sort of render test window over here. Let me just remember what settings I put in here. I think it was 103 and 107. Like I said, I'm not going to go into detail with this stuff. I just want you to sort of see the process. You can read more about this in KnobMan's manual if you want to know the details of what I'm doing here. Okay, we're pretty much done now. We're going to add a new layer. We want that to be on top of the ring. So there's the ring layer. We want to add it on top. And we're going to select metal circle. And you see it gives us a metal disc, essentially. I'm going to change the colour of it to grey. That's a bit dark. Let's brighten it up. We want it to be sort of stainless steel looking. That'll do for now. We're going to emboss it, which will raise it out. I'm going to do this to the extreme so that you can see what it looks like. So you can see we can raise it out. We can also go the other way, and it kind of goes like a bowl. But we just want it to be raised just slightly. So I think 6. Put 6 in. Now we need to shrink it because we've got to have it fitting inside the circle. So again, just the same zoom control as before. We're going to bring that down to 75. Mouse isn't very accurate, I'll type it in. Okay, so you can see we're getting somewhere similar to what we have in the final product. Now, what we need to do is we need this tiny little sort of indented circle to indicate the value. So we'll add him. So to do that, we're just going to add another layer on top of this one and put a circle fill. We're going to emboss it as, I think we'll do -36. Now I haven't changed the size yet, so it's just added a big red disc covering our whole design so far, but don't worry about that. We need to change the colour to grey. That should do fine, and we need to shrink it. So we'll change the size to 9. So you see now we've got this tiny little button type thing in the middle. But we need to offset that so that it goes around the edge of the knob rather than just staying in the middle. So we offset that here in the section highlighted, labeled offset. And we'll offset the x-axis to -27. So you can see it's just over at the edge for now, but we're going to make it rotate shortly. We've got one more thing to add, and that's a very subtle texture to the top of the silver disc. So we're going to add another circle fill. We're going to change the colour to grey once more, and then we're going to change this where it says texture. We can add various textures. We're going to change it to mosaic, and I'm going to turn the texture depth right up, and you'll see we just get this mosaic pattern. Then I'll adjust the texture zoom to about 50. So now I just need to reduce the transparency of this so that it just provides a subtle texture over the knob control. And we do that down here where we've got this section colours. If you click that, you can hide it. If you click that, you can show it. So we reduce the alpha to increase the transparency. So I'm just going to bring that right down to, we just want to be very subtle. Can you see it there? Got it at 6. It's just a very subtle texture. I think we'll take it down one more even to 5. And we want it to be the same size as the big grey disc. So I'll just see what size we put for that. All right, 75. So I'm going to change this one to 75 as well, so it only covers the disk. Okay, I'll bring the alpha back up so you can see that clearly. See, it only covers the disk now because they're both the same size. So I'll put 5 in there again. So there's a very subtle texture. Maybe I will increase it to 6. Okay, now the last thing to do is got to add some animation. So let's look at the finished thing. So you can see that all that's really moving is the little circle on the outside. So that's all we've got to animate. We don't have to animate the main knob. We just animate the little circle. We could animate the main knob if we wanted to, but I won't bother for this demonstration. And to do that, we go to here where it says rotate at. And you see this control here, it looks like a play button. And wherever you see this, that means you can animate the parameter. So we can animate the alpha channel if we wanted to go, if we wanted the transparency to change. We can animate, look, we've got lighting options down here, we've got shadows, we can animate all of those. But we're going to animate this thing called rotate at. So I'll just click this button here to activate the animation, and we're going to go from minus 90 degrees to 270 degrees. And I'm going to click this thing that says keep direction, and that'll just keep the shading correct on it, so it keeps it looking indented. Because you can see without that on it, it looks like it's popped out. It looks like it's gone the other way. We want it to look like that. And now if I move this slider, it will show us the animation. Okay. Now currently we've only got 31 frames of animation. I usually like to have about 60. So to do that, we'll go into preferences and change this to 60. Something else we can do, which I forgot about, we can change the image size, and we'll change it to 64. So it'll blow the image up a bit. Just give it a moment to render that. There we are. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So, oh, I can hide that green background now because we don't want that displaying. So there's our animation now with 60 frames. So a nice smooth animation there. And you can build sliders in exactly the same way, just simple animations. And like I said earlier on, you can even build buttons and switches and VU meters and all kinds of other things. So it's not limited to just knobs, but that's what I use it for mainly, and I think it's perfect for that. Okay, one more thing before we leave the wonderful world of KnobMan. We should have a look at how we export graphics, because the format and the settings we use are important for when we import our images into Kontakt. So before we do anything, let's go into preferences. And you can see here we've got export options, and it will stitch them. It will provide individual frames. That means it'll provide one image for each frame. So in our case, 60 images. We don't want that. Or it'll provide an animated GIF file. We don't want that either. We just want the frames stitched together. And what that means is all the frames will appear in one long cartoon strip style image. And we can have them vertically or horizontally. It doesn't make too much difference. We do have to change a setting on our Kontakt side of things. I usually go with vertical, but it's really just a matter of preference. Then we go to file, and we can either save the KnobMan file, or we can export the image, and that's what I'm going to choose to do now. So let's put that on the desktop, and we could put a name here, so we just call it knob. You can be more descriptive with your name if you want. And then it says save as type, and we've got to select the file type we want. By default, I think it saves it as a bitmap file. That's these BMP files, bitmap. We want it really as a PNG file. You can see it says PNG, and then it says with alpha. And if we select with alpha, which is what we want PNG with alpha, it will put transparency information in the graphics file, so that our graphics, anything that we haven't filled in, basically won't just be white, because usually if you save an image it automatically puts a white background, and we don't want that. And the reason for that is, let me just show you back in KnobMan. You remember our image actually looks like this. It actually has a square around it. So if we didn't save it with alpha, this square area would be saved as being white, so we'd end up with a white block, which wouldn't look very good in Kontakt. Let me just I'll bring up Kontakt here and just drag this across. So that's what it would look like in Kontakt. But with the alpha applied to it, it looks like that. So that's why we use alpha. It's to get rid of the white box. I mean, in this case it's green because we set it to green, but usually it'd be white. So it's to get rid of that, basically. I'll export the image now. I'm going to go to File, Export Image, Desktop. I'm just going to type in knob, and must remember to select the correct file type, PNG with alpha, and hit Save there. And just give it a moment to do its thing. And here's the file. And you can see it's just like a big long cartoon strip. Okay, and those are all the 60 frames of animation. And shortly we'll look at how we actually get this into Kontakt and turn it from that into this. Don't worry, you don't have to create that KnobMan file or the knob graphic. It's all provided for you in the study materials folder. That was purely just a informative exercise. Alright guys, let's move on to buttons and switches. So button switches and menus. They can all be customized in Kontakt. We haven't used menus yet in our GUIs, but we will use one today. The graphics we use are made up of 6 separate images. They're essentially animation frames, and Kontakt chooses which frame to display depending on the state of the button. So for instance, if the button is off, then the off frame is displayed. If the button is on, then the on frame will be displayed. And again, in your study materials folder, there is a button or switch template that you can use, and the Photoshop file's in there too. I'm just going to open up the PNG now. So if you don't have Photoshop, you can use the PNG. But this is the button template. Now, your buttons don't have to be this size. Obviously, in Kontakt here, you can see that these are massive, and I've just done that to demonstrate to you the different frame states. But you can make your buttons any size. But no matter which size you make your buttons at, they have to have the same 6 images. So your first image has to be the one for off, when the button's off. Second one has to be the one for on. The third one has to be for off, mouse down. That's why I put down there. So that's when you click on it, and then on, mouse down, and then off, mouse over. So when you hover the mouse over the button, you can have a different frame, and again, on, mouse over. So when the button's in the on mode and you hover the mouse over, it will display this one. And we'll have a look at that in just a second. You don't have to have a different image for each one if you don't want. You could just have the off image for all 3 off states and the on image for all 3 on states. You only have to change the image if you want a different effect when that button state occurs, but you must have the 6 images. Okay, so this one on the left is a menu. You can see it says item 1 there. We'll discuss that more later when we actually create a menu. This one on the right is a switch, or it might be a button, but the effect is the same. And both switches and menus use the same 6 image format. Although with menus you tend to do them more like this, which is the menu template we're actually going to use later on, and the only thing that really changes for the different states is the background colour and the drop down arrow thing. You don't have to have a drop down arrow, that's just what I've added on this one. But you wouldn't really put text on any of these because your text is automatically created by the menu. If I click on it, you can see it says item 1, item 2, item 3. When we come on to menus later on in our final script, you'll see that in more detail. But let's look at the button. So it's currently in the off state. If I put the mouse over it, it's going to go into the off over state. Now if I click, it's actually going to go into the on down state because the button's going to click on and we've got the mouse held down, so it goes on into the on down state. Now if I release, it's going to say on over because we're now in the on position but the mouse is still over it. If I move the mouse away, it's on. And now if I click on it, it'll be the off down state because the button is now off and the mouse is held down. So that's the 6 frames of animation and the 6 button states. I'll show you the template for the switch now inside Photoshop, just for those of you who do have Photoshop. Okay, it looks something like that. Now you can see I put this grey background on. I'm just going to zoom in here. You can see there's this grey background, different shades, and the reason for that is it's important to make sure that your buttons are evenly spaced apart, your button graphics. So when we pass this file to Kontakt, we'll tell Kontakt that there are 6 frames in the file and that they are stacked vertically. So Kontakt will take this file and it will split it evenly into 6. So that's why each frame must be spaced evenly apart. So I just use this grey background because in Photoshop it's a bit easier to space things out if you can clearly see the perimeter that you've got to work within. Okay guys, so I think you've got all you need to know now about the basic GUI stuff. There really isn't that much more to know with regards to graphic design. The important stuff now is to build a GUI using our Kontakt scripts and apply these graphics to them. So if you head on over to the next video, we'll pick it up there.